everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for today's tip. This is an interesting one. Recently we've seen several tournaments get won by guys flipping small Texas rigs. As an example, Keith Pouchet won a Bassmaster Open event on the Red River, flipping a little 3-inch Berkeley Powerbait Pit Boss. And I've gotten a lot of questions since then. I'm not sure if it's specifically based on that tournament win, but most people would say, why not throw the standard 4-inch size instead of the 3-incher like he was? And I think there's very important times to recognize when a 3-incher outperforms a 4-incher. And in fact, Berkeley makes a 5-inch size. So today's question is going to be geared towards when would you throw a larger size Texas rig versus a smaller size Texas rig? Because, in my opinion, there are very specific times when one will do much better than the other. In fact, I've got three specific scenarios where your small ones will almost always outproduce a standard size Texas rigged plastic. So I'll share those with you at the end. But the first thing I want to do is walk you through the main differences as to when outperforms the other and some of the more basic conditions you might confront that will suggest to use a smaller one like the 3-inch pit boss versus a 4 or a 5-inch pit boss. Before I do get into these, though, I do want to remind you guys that if you're looking for some help on your local lakes, check out the lake breakdowns that I do. I've got like 100 to 150 of them that are done for northern lakes, southern smallmouth, all over the place. And if I haven't done your local lake, you can request me to do your local lake. It's 40 waypoints based on a specific season. We give you a bunch of different patterns based on those waypoints. It's a really good way to learn your lakes or get a little bit of help. Also, if you want to support the channel and you're looking to purchase tackle, please use my Tackle Warehouse affiliate link. I'll put that in the video description as well as the lake breakdown link. All right, so let's get into the difference between when you're flipping with a big Texas rig versus a small Texas rig. So one of the most obvious things that you want to take into account is your water clarity. Anytime you're fishing dirtier water, a larger bait will generally perform better because it has more water displacement, which creates more vibration and allows the fish a better opportunity to find your bait. If you're fishing really muddy water, you want a bigger bait with more kickers that produces that vibration versus a smaller size. The smaller one generally will be much more indiscreet, meaning it's much easier for the fish not to be able to find this. And to counter that, if you're fishing really clear water, I generally prefer to go either really small or very large in clear water. I feel like the fish can see your bait, it's much more visible. And generally speaking, the smaller the bait, I feel like the more the fish are less intimidated and therefore more willing to bite your small bait. I like throwing big baits because I think they've got big drawing power. But if we're talking about a Texas rig, I do like throwing a small 3-inch size bait in very clear water. Another difference would come down to the fishery you're fishing. If you happen to be fishing a place like the Red River, which is known for producing small fish, a 2-pound bass is a very nice quality fish there, and you're looking to generate more bites, a 3-inch size like Keith Pouchet was throwing would be a great one to go with. If you happen to be fishing a place, say like Lake Gunnersville, where a 2-pound fish is nothing special, in fact, there's a lot more 3, 4, and 5-pounders, a bigger profile bait is probably a better way to go because you're not necessarily fishing for bites at that point. You're fishing for size. So that's something to keep in mind. Another would have to do with time of year. A lot of the time, if you're talking about fishing in the spring, a smaller bait can be a better way to go about in terms of generating more strikes. It seems like the fish are more willing to eat a small bait versus a larger size. Now, to counter that, in the summer period, I generally prefer a larger size bait because the fish's activity levels are higher, their metabolism rates are higher, therefore they need to eat more. And this is not an intimidating size compared to the 3-inch, but it's a size that just I think is a better match of what the fish are eating. This color is Skeet's Green Money, which is one of my absolute favorites for matching bluegill. And when you think of a 4-inch bluegill, that's a perfect size meal for a bass. So in the summer months, I generally will go with a larger one just because the fish have a higher activity level. Uh, the next just comes down to the pressured body of water. If it is a pressured body of water, generally speaking, I get a lot more bites on the 3-inch pit boss versus a 4 or a 5-inch. It just seems like, again, the fish are less intimidated, more willing to bite. And if you're on a heavily pressured body of water, going smaller, going finesse is a great way to generate those strikes. So, those are four simple differences, four things you go out on the water, you can kind of just tell based on time of year and based on what's going on as to whether you want a bigger or smaller bait. But I tell you this, there are three specific times where I will always choose the little 3-inch pit boss over the 4-inch. And I do want to clarify, this is not just about the pit boss. This is about Texas rig baits in general. Most of the more well-known baits out there that are good Texas rig flipping baits have multiple sizes. So, I really like the chigger craw. There's a 3-inch chigger craw or a 4-inch chigger craw. There's different size. If you're a beaver fan, a Reaction Innovations beaver, you got small beavers, big beavers. This works across the board for plastics. So the first has to do with if I'm bed fishing, I will always go with the smaller bait. The smaller bait does two things. One, the fish that are guarding beds are much more willing to eat a smaller bait versus a big bait. This is my experience, this is my opinion, but if you've got a small bait on the bed, it seems like the fish is much more willing to eat that, actually put it in their mouth and eat it versus just trying to chase it away. It seems like the fish are not in a feeding mode, but it's kind of that whole idea of you put a little M&M in front of me, I'm going to eat it. You put a whole cheeseburger, I'm not going to eat it if I'm not hungry. I probably would eat, but you know what I'm saying. Uh, so the other thing is the bigger the bait that you use when bed fishing, the more likely they are to pick up one of the trailers and just carry it off. So if I'm bed fishing, I'm always going with the 3-inch pit boss in this case. The next has to do with punching really heavy cover. I find that a smaller bait can work much better when punching really thick mats. Your hyacinth, really thick milfoil, really thick hydrilla. It flows through the mat much better and it hides behind a bigger weight. So if you've got an ounce or an ounce and a half weight, it just sits behind it and flows right through it versus the larger size baits, which can tend to have their appendages grab on something and therefore hang you up and prevent you from actually punching through the mat. The same can be said for flipping bushes. If I'm flipping pretty thick bushes, I tend to like to go with the smaller one versus the big one because I'm not getting caught on all the different bushes. So for me, I'm almost always flipping the smaller Texas rig plastics when I'm flipping bushes or punching through like hyacinth mats and thick cover. The last one would be if you're fishing a body of water where there's a good population of spotted bass or a good population of smallmouth that are up shallow, you will get more bites on the 3-inch versus a 4 or a 5-inch. It's just one of those things. Both spotted bass and smallmouth love to eat smaller creatures. I don't know if it's just based on the fact their mouths are smaller, but the point is they have a harder time resisting a little nugget versus a bigger bait. And again, they're similar to spawning fish. If you're flipping smallmouth, smallmouth will play with their food, it seems like. They'd grab the appendages, swim off with it, spit it out, eat it. I don't want to deal with that. I want them to suck my bait in the first time around. So if I'm up north, flipping the river out here where I'm fishing for smallmouth, I like the 3-inchers. If I'm down on Lewis Smith Lake in Alabama, flipping cover and docks or whatever I am for what is probably going to be more spotted bass than anything, I go with the 3-incher. If I'm primarily on a largemouth lake, I'm going with a 4-incher or bigger if the scenario doesn't suggest me using a small one. But those are the times and places, guys, where a 3-incher and a 4-incher or bigger will differ. There is definitely a time and place for pitching smaller Texas rig baits like this 3-inch pit boss. Just something you got to get out there and play around with it. But I can assure you, there's a reason why a guy like Keith Pouchet wins the Red River where he's flipping a 3-incher instead of the 4-incher. There was a reason for that. So take what just shared with you, apply it to your fishing on the water, and you'll find that you will generate more bites in certain circumstances based on using a larger Texas rig bait versus a smaller one. So hopefully this was helpful to you. If it was, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow for you.